Welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. Today we are building Sephiroth, and this guy is absolutely insane. As always, you can click on that whatnot link to claim your free $15, and you can always get 10% off all of your Tolarian library proxies whenever you use code DT4D. Last but not least, if you guys are enjoying the content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It's free and it really helps me out. Now, let's read what Sephiroth does. For 3 CMC, we get a human soldier that enters the battlefield and sacrifices a creature if we want to. And if we do, we get to draw a card. He also allows us to do that whenever he attacks. Then he has this Broken Blood Artist trigger whenever a creature dies. Not only are we going to drain our opponents, we additionally get to flip this guy if that ability has resolved 4 times this turn. And then whenever we flip him, we get an emblem that essentially is a Blood Artist, again draining our opponents every time a creature dies. And then we get a Broken Attack trigger. Whenever he attacks, we can sacrifice any number of creatures and then draw any number of cards equal to the amount of creatures we sacrificed. Whew, reading magic cards is getting harder and harder, but this guy is absolutely insane and I'm excited to build him. This list is basically slamming a Fleshbag Marauder, sacrificing 4 creatures, right? We have to sacrifice the Fleshbag Marauder, they have to sacrifice 3 creatures, and then instantly flipping our commander. And then once he's flipping, we're doing some kind of insane things, like causing our opponents to discard their entire hand, and then we sacrifice all of the zombies we created to draw an entire new hand. You know, there's just a lot of really messed up stuff we can do with this commander. Let's kick it off by talking about the most broken cards in the deck. Forsaken Miner is 1 CMC, and he says, whenever you commit a crime, you may pay black. If you do, return Forsaken Miner from your graveyard to the battlefield. Committing a crime is whenever we target an opponent's anything. So whenever we trigger our emblem that we have and deal damage to target opponent, that's committing a crime. That means as long as we can produce 1 black mana every time a creature dies, this just goes infinite and deals infinite damage. All we need is a sack outlet and again that mana producer. War and Soul Trader and Phyrexian Altar are the easiest ways to do this. War and Soul Traders for 3 mana says pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, create a treasure token, and then Phyrexian Altar says sacrifice a creature, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So they're the sack outlet and they generate the black mana we need. Additionally, we can use Pitiless Plunderer. He says whenever another creature you control dies, create a treasure token. All we need is a sack outlet from there. Crick, Son of Yawgmoth also weirdly works here. We just need 1 emblem and then our commander on the battlefield. That way we gain 2 life and deal 2 damage every time we're sacrificing the Forsaken Miner, because Crick is going to allow us to use 2 life to pay for the black pip instead of mana, because he turns all of our black pips in our entire deck into Phyrexian mana, which is kind of broken on his own. And that goes for all of these cards. All of these cards are very amazing in the deck without Forsaken Miner, and then Forsaken Miner just has an insane synergy with the commander, so it's kind of just perfect here. Awaken the Erstwild is also insane with this commander. I think it's definitely going to be one of the best cards in the deck. Let me explain. For 5 CMC, you get a sorcery that says each player discards all the cards in their hand, then create that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. Not only is that going to give them a board of creatures that they can now sacrifice to all of our Edict effects, additionally, that's going to give us a board of creatures to sacrifice to our commander's flip side. So now we can sacrifice 6 zombies because we discarded 6 cards, and then draw 6 additional cards. Our opponents don't have cards, we have cards, and we have a full grip to play against them. It's kind of messed up. Gisa the Hellraiser goes insanely wide. For 5 CMC, you get a legendary creature human warlock with ward 2, pay 2 life. Skeletons and zombies you control get +1/+1 and have menace. And then whenever you commit a crime, create 2 tapped 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature tokens. This ability only triggers each turn. Notably, since it's only once each turn, we can trigger it up to 4 times per rotation. That's going to net us a total of 8 rogue creatures as long as we have a sack outlet and our commander on the battlefield. Living Death is going to be our late game I'm going to win here card. It says each player exiles all creature cards from their graveyards, then sacrifices all creature cards they control and puts all cards exiled this way into their graveyard for 5 CMC. So basically, you sacrifice your board state, put your entire graveyard onto the battlefield, and then put whatever was on your board into the graveyard. This is really good here because this entire deck works around taking away our opponent's board state through Edict effects, and our commander generates those emblems. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all of our Edict effects, all of our creatures in our graveyard, then we're going to cast Living Death, reanimating not only all of our Edict creatures, but additionally reanimating all of our opponent's creatures that are just going to get sacrificed to all of the Edict effects that we just reanimated, causing us to drain our opponents to death, or at least that's the theory here. Grave Pact and Dictate of Erebos both say whenever a creature you control dies, each player sacrifices a creature. What this means is whenever we attack with our commander and we sacrifice one creature, our opponents each have to sacrifice a creature also. That's going to be 4 creatures and allow us to instantly flip our commander. That's going to be super useful here, not to mention with these on the battlefield in a mono black Edict deck, no one is going to have a board state except for us, which is also pretty oppressive to play against. Edric Sar goes insanely wide and has some insane interaction with cards we already have in the deck. Let's read them. Edric Sar Master Breeder is 5 CMC, a legendary creature human wizard that says whenever you cast a creature spell, create X 1/1 black thrall creature tokens where X is that spell's mana value. Additionally, whenever you control 7 or more thralls, sacrifice Edric Sar. The problem here is we're never going to sacrifice Edric Sar, so as long as we have something that generates mana whenever we sacrifice a creature, such as a Warren Soul Trader or a Phyrexian Altar, and then additionally we have cards that draw us cards whenever we sacrifice a creature, such as Liliana, Smothering Abomination, or Dark Prophecy. Most of them say whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card and lose a life. Smothering Abomination says at the beginning of your upkeep, you sacrifice a creature, and whenever you sacrifice a creature, draw a card. Liliana Dreadhorde General says whenever a creature you control dies, you get to draw a card. Also, it's a planeswalker, so it has those plus abilities. +1, we get to create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. -4, each player sacrifices 2 of creatures of their choice, so that instantly flips our commander, and it's a ton of die triggers. And then -9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. So it's a huge Edict effect if we get it to the -9, but honestly, we like her static ability and we like her +1 for fodder. But anyway, let's talk about how these two make Edric Sar a monster. What's going to happen is you cast a 5 CMC creature. That's going to net you 5 Thrall tokens. Now you can sacrifice those 5 Thrall tokens for 5 mana. When you do that, you're going to draw 5 cards. I think you can see how you're able to just cast your entire library this way while triggering our commander and killing all of our opponents. It's not going to be okay. Wand of Orcus also seemed super solid here for 3 CMC. You get a legendary artifact equipment that says whenever equipped creature attacks or blocks, it and zombies you control gain death touch until end of turn. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. Our commanders are 5/5, so we can equip this to our commander, deal combat damage, generate 5 creature tokens. That's going to give us sack fodder for this turn, or next turn we could just sacrifice it to our commander's attack trigger and draw an entire new hand basically. Fumulus, also kind of crazy here. For 4 CMC, you get a flying death touch vampire insect that says whenever a player sacrifices a non-token creature, you create a 1/1 black insect creature token with flying. Whenever an insect, leech, or slug, or worm you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So what's going to happen here is we cast an Edict effect, we sacrifice our Edict creature, they sacrifice 3 creatures, and then we're instantly going to generate 4 tokens off of our Fumulus as long as we didn't sacrifice a token creature, which is also just going to repopulate our board with more sack fodder. It kind of gets insane very quickly. The last card we're going to talk about before I get into what makes this deck works is Lorcan. Lorcan's kind of insane, and I don't know if he's going to be great, but I really hope he is. For 7 CMC, you get a legendary creature devil that has flying, and whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may pay life equal to its mana value. When you do, put it onto the battlefield under your control. It's a warlock in addition to its other types. Then, if a warlock you control would die, exile it instead. What's really cool here is we can just yoink our opponent's creatures, and we're gaining hopefully a ton of life off of these emblems we're creating off of our commander that we're always able to just steal our opponent's creatures. That turns all of our Edict effects into just grab 3 creatures our opponents control. That's going to be pretty funny. I know I said that was our last one, but I have to talk about Chthonian Nightmare here. This card's just absolutely insane. For 2 CMC, you get an enchantment that says Chthonian Nightmare enters with 3 energy. You can pay X energy, sacrifice a creature, return Chthonian Nightmare to its owner's hand, and then return a creature card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. So this allows you to loop all of your Edict effects over and over again, and honestly, there's a couple ways in the deck to make Cthulhian Nightmare completely free. You have your sacrifice effects that adds black mana to your mana pool. We're on Jet Medallion, so that reduces all of our black spells by 1. We're even on Defiler of Flesh, a 4 CMC creature that says, and as an additional cost to cast black permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. Those spells get reduced by 1 black mana. So again, this can only reduce the colored pips, but as long as we can pay for the generic, we kind of get there. There's a lot of pieces that we can just combine and then make Cthulhian Nightmare free, and then we're able to cast 3 CMC creatures and below infinitely from our graveyard. Notably, our commander is 3 CMC, so all we have to do is reanimate him first and then grab 2 different 3 CMC creatures, and we can kind of just net infinite emblems this way by sacrificing our commander after we've sacrificed 4 creatures, reanimating him, and then looping the other 3. Repeat this until all of your opponents are drained to death. Phyrexian Reclamation can work very similarly here. It just says 1 CMC, you can pay 1 generic and a black to pay 2 life and return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. But we need a ton of cost reduction here because, again, this is going to return the creature to our hand and then we have to recast it. Something like an Edric Sar helps us get there, but there's a lot more hoops with this one. It's still very broken though. The next thing this deck needs is fodder, because I reliably want to be able to sacrifice a creature whenever he enters the battlefield and attacks. Infestation Sage is 1 CMC. He enters the battlefield and says whenever this creature dies, create a 1/1 black-green insect creature token with flying. Just a solid 1-drop that's going to ensure you to cast your commander turn 3 and get the card advantage, and he's even going to ensure you're going to have a creature to sacrifice the very next turn. Bitter Blossom, Jadar, and Dreadhorde Invasion are all 2 CMC, notable because we cast them before we cast our commander, and they're all basically going to net you 1 token per turn to sacrifice, which is good enough. Black Market Connections is a little bit better. For 3 CMC, we get an enchantment that says at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you get to create a treasure token, you get to draw a card, and you get to create a 3/2 colorless shapeshifter. The only problem is that's going to cost you 1, 2, and 3 life for a total of 6 life if you want all of those effects. Notably, we are gaining a ton of life in this deck though, so it's going to be super solid. Ogre Slumlord is also very efficient at creating fodder. For 5 CMC, you get a creature Ogre Rogue that says whenever another non-token creature dies, you may create a 1/1 black rat creature token. Rats you control have death touch. Notably, that means if you drop an Edict effect and everybody sacrifices a non-token creature, you get 4 rats. That's absolutely insane. Pawn of Ulamog, Sifter of Skulls, and Blight Mound are all creatures that generate a 1/1 token whenever we sacrifice a non-token creature. Notably, this only works for us. I do like Sifter of Skulls and Pawn of Ulamog though, because they're actually going to create those 0/1 colorless Eldrazi's that we're able to sacrifice for mana, so that's pretty notable there. The other one gives us a black-green pest that we can sacrifice to gain 1 life. Not too bad, but it's no Eldrazi spawn token, you know what I mean? Chittering Witch is also a creature that can trigger our commander by itself. Whenever it enters the battlefield, we get to create a 1/1 black rat creature token equal to the number of opponents we have. So that's her, and then 3 rats. So that's enough to trigger our commander. Additionally, she has a sacrifice outlet on her. For 2 CMC, we can sacrifice a creature, and then target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. So this is another way to take out our opponent's creatures while also triggering our commander. So we honestly don't have to go ahead and sacrifice all of those rats to trigger her, because we're usually able to kill a couple of our opponent's creatures while sacrificing the rats. Nether Trader, for 2 black CMC, we get a Spirit with Haste and Shadow. It also says whenever another creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 1 black mana. If you do, return Nether Trader from your graveyard to the battlefield. Bloodghast is also a 2 black CMC creature that says this creature can't block. This creature has haste as long as an opponent has 10 or less life, and whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you can return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. Crowded Crypt is a card I'm slowly growing on. For 3 CMC, you get a mana rock, and then it says whenever a creature you control dies, put a corpse counter on Crowded Crypt. Then for 6 mana, you can sacrifice Crowded Crypt and create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed for each corpse counter on Crowded Crypt. It's kind of actually insane. After our fodder, we need our Edict effects. Remember, one of these that forces every player to sacrifice a creature allows us to flip our commander immediately. Accursed Marauder, Fleshbag Marauder, Demon's Disciple, Plague Crafter, and Merciless Executioner all enter the battlefield and make every opponent sacrifice a creature. Notably, Plague Crafter makes an opponent discard a card if they don't have a creature to sacrifice, so that's pretty useful. Zot's Will, for 5 CMC, we get an instant that says choose one. If you control your commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both. Each opponent sacrifices a creature they control with the greatest power, and then exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards, then create X01 Black Thrall creature tokens, where X is the greatest power among cards exiled this way. This is really cool here because not only does it get rid of our opponent's strongest thing, it flips our commander instantly and gives us an entire board state to sacrifice to our commander's attack trigger. It's hands down probably the best Edict in the deck. Season's Lost is a weird sorcery from Bloomborough. You pay 5 CMC and then you get 5 paw prints, but that's kind of 5 energy to spend. For 1 paw print, each player sacrifices a creature. For 2 paw prints, draw cards for each creature you control that died this turn, and then for 3 paw prints, each opponent loses life, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. I'm probably spending 3 paw prints here and then the 2 paw prints to draw cards equal to the amount of creatures you controlled that died this turn. So you get 3 sack triggers from every player and then draw a ton of cards. I'm down. Rankle can also instantly flip our commander. It's a legendary creature fairy rogue with flying and haste, and says whenever Rankle, Master of Pranks, deals combat damage to a player, choose any number. Each player discards a card, each player loses 1 life and draws a card, and each player sacrifices a creature. That's 4 creatures. We got there. We did the thing. I'm also including Revel in Riches. This is a 5 CMC enchantment that says whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless treasure token. This is amazing because it essentially turns all of our Edict effects into flat out rituals. We cast a 3 CMC Edict effect, we get 3 treasure tokens back. I'm down for that. It also says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. I'm not really into that, but turning all of my edicts into literal treasure tokens, I'm down for that. We're wrapping it up here, but there's a few other cards I really want to talk about that take this deck to the next level. Throne of Eldraine and Sceptre of Eternal Glory. These are amazing for monocolored decks. One is 5 CMC and says as Throne of Eldraine enters the battlefield, choose a color, black obviously, and then you can add 4 mana of the chosen color to your mana pool, and you can only cast monocolored spells of that color. So no artifacts here, but all your black spells, you can use this to cast those. It's amazing. It also has an activated ability for 3. We can tap it to draw 2 cards, spend only mana of the chosen color to activate this ability. Sceptre of Eternal Glory says add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, or add 3 mana of any one color, activate only if you control 3 or more lands with the same name. Swamps, pretty easy there. This is 4 CMC, gives us 3 mana. I love it. We're on Ashnod's Altar, which is a sacrifice outlet. We sacrifice a creature to add 2 colorless to our mana pool. Spawning Pit, also a sacrifice outlet for 2 mana. We can sacrifice a creature to put a charge counter on Spawning Pit. Then we can pay 1 to remove a charge counter from Spawning Pit to create a 2/2 colorless spawn artifact creature token. So it's a sack outlet that eventually gives you more creatures. I'm kind of in love with that. Skull Clamp, we can equip this to a creature. It's going to get +1/-1, and then whenever the creature dies, we get to draw 2 cards. Absolutely insane. Yawgmoth is also an insane sack outlet for 4 CMC. You get a legendary creature human cleric that has protection from humans, and pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, put a 1/1 counter on up to 1 target creature, and then you get to draw a card. You can also pay 2 black to discard a card and proliferate. Braid's Arisen Nightmare can trigger our commander and instantly flip him, but I don't see that happening. We mostly want Braids in here for card advantage, because for 3 CMC, you get a legendary creature Nightmare that says at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, each of those opponents loses 2 life, and then you get to draw a card. Notably, sacrifice a land, you're probably drawing 3 cards. Karavek the Punisher basically turns our entire graveyard into our hand. For 3 CMC, we get a legendary creature human warlock that says whenever you commit a crime, exile up to 1 target black card from your graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy. If you do, you lose 2 life. Notably, don't exile anything that you're going to try to loop from the graveyard later, or anything that returns itself from the graveyard, but it still gives you access to an edict effect if you need it, or your instant and sorceries. The fact that it's black card and not permanent is insane. That's going to do it for today's deck tech. Sorry that it went so long, but again, I wanted to try to explain every interaction, and there was a lot in this deck. So let me know if you appreciate these longer videos where I go in depth and talk about all the niche interactions. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you guys in the next one.